Thank you very much, President Lumia, Vice President Kellen, members of the Board of Education, senior staff administration, faculty, staff, and members of the Wappingers Central School District learning community. Now, when I took this position in October of 2020, one of the things that I stated was that we were going to be totally transparent about how we function as a school district. One of the ways that we can do that is through our budget process, which has changed somewhat than what it has been over the previous years. So what I'm going to do this evening is I'm going to provide you a preliminary budget and provide an opportunity for some discussion. What I can tell you is this preliminary budget, which is not the recommended budget, but it will be very close to the recommended budget, is historic in nature. And the fact that for the first time since the inception of the tax cap in 2012, 2013, the superintendent will not be making a recommendation that we go right up to the tax cap. We believe that we will be able to continue to provide the necessary services and programs that our students need and deserve, as well as be fiscally responsible to the taxpayers of this district. I'll take a few minutes to explain where we are in that regard. And then as we go down the line within the coming weeks and get closer to the budget, I will have an opportunity to present the superintendent's recommended budget, which is basically the district recommended budget that I will present to the board. So with that, connecting with our community preliminary budget discussion, Board of Education members, President John Lumia, Vice President Peggy Kellen, Trustee Carrie Cahill, Trustee Marie Johnson, Trustee Michael McFarland, Trustee John Morgan, Trustee Keith Odoms, Trustee Eddie Sloshower, and Trustee James Spencer. I'd like to thank all of you for your support. What I'm going to be presenting this night is not my wish list. This is a wish list that is combined of information that the community believes is important for our students, that our faculty and staff believes is important for our students, that our Board of Education believes is important for our students, the senior staff administration believes is important for our students. So if we can move on to the next slide. Keywords that you'll hear me refer to in the budget process. What is the budget? It's the district spending. It's a balance of revenues and expenses. What is the tax levy? The amount received by the district in property taxes. State aid, the amount received from fiscal year 2023, the governor's executive budget proposal, which we now have. Other revenue, other financial resources that we receive at the local level. And assigned fund balance, the amount intended for specific use assignment for the district to reduce the burden on the taxpayer. So how do we derive this preliminary budget? Well, we use estimates because we don't have the final numbers at this point. So we develop projected budgets based on feedback, as I indicated, from our community vendors, departmental historical data, municipal input, what we value as a community. We look at the stability of our economic markets, debt service rates, health insurance contribution rates, New York State retirement system rate of returns, and the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. Administrative, offices and schools, initial local proposals and requests, again, maintaining high quality student-centered programs and highly qualified staff. Board of Education, central office administration, we get feedback, and also governance and decision-making. We work collaboratively together to derive a final recommended budget. We can move to the next page. So what are some of the challenges that we face? Well, first of all, the budget deadline is April 1st of 2022 for aid finalization, just a couple months away. We need to balance the social and emotional health supports for our students and staff, and we need to continue to personalize the educational experience for each and every one of our students by maintaining appropriate staffing levels to ensure that our students get the assistance that they needed, especially now in times that have been most challenging. Maintain our current educational program, continue to support our academic supports, academic enrichment, extracurricular activities, as well as professional development for staff. We are seeing students that are returning to us after the remote learning that, again, was not something that we chose. It was something that we were forced to do. We did the best we could with it. It was not optimal. We are seeing our students coming back to our schools this year. They are suffering academically, socially, and emotionally. It's incumbent upon us to provide them with the necessary assistance and programs to do that. What do we know so far? The Consumer Price Index, or the CPI, is at 4.7%. Since the CPI exceeds 2%, the district will utilize 2% in the tax cap formula. So the completion of the tax cap calculation has occurred. And the maximum allowable tax levy increase is 1.38%. That would be the highest that the district would be able to raise the tax levy. That is what the district has gone to, that number, whatever it may be, since the inception of the tax cap in 2012, 2013. That will not be the recommendation this year. Currently, the district has balanced the 2022-2023 budget using a tax levy increase of 0.99%. That's 0.39% less than the allowable tax levy increase. And dependent upon some of the estimates that we're currently estimating very conservatively, there is the potential for that 0.99 to come in even less than 0.99 for the recommended budget. We will know more on that in the coming months, but we do not anticipate that it will exceed 0.99. So the New York State Governor's executive budget proposal includes the reinstatement of the foundation aid formula. That's important. That's huge. Reimbursable aids were not amended in this proposal from New York State. Currently, the district is budgeting using the full governor's executive budget proposal. We're not sure what the legislature is going to determine in regards to the budget proposal. We're hoping that they will at least match the governor's proposal, if not exceed it. Again, why? We are returning from COVID. We have a lot of work to do, and we need to do it together, and we need to put those programs and services in place for our students. So as I said, stay tuned for the budget updates at the April 7th Board of Education meeting. So how did we get the preliminary budget? As I stated before, we connect with our community. What are the mission and core values of the Wappingers Central School District? The values and goals of the Board of Education, senior staff discussion and goals, and community input. Many of you have sent emails. You've either emailed me personally or you've emailed the budget email as to what you believe our students need. What do you want your children to have as students in the Wappingers Central School District based upon what we've all encountered in this pandemic? So needless to say, how do we build a preliminary balanced budget, which is what I'm presenting this evening? All salaries are budgeted. Substitute teacher codes are increased to align with projected costs. As I said before, increased staffing for social and emotional needs, social workers, E&L teachers, more special education teachers. Why? Personalize the educational experience for all of our students. Safety and security. We've recently seen within our district some threats over the year. We need to be proactive as we move forward. So what I am going to propose is that we put a safety and security officer at Wappingers Junior High School and Van Wyck Junior High School beginning next year. That hasn't happened to this point. It's needed, it's necessary, it's time. Also, the addition of a personnel assistant. This will be extremely beneficial because that individual will be responsible for all of the substitute personnel within our district. Currently, that is spread out among all of the personnel associates. We all know the difficulties in finding substitute personnel. This will be that individual's responsibility. And I know that it will show marked improvement in our ability to recruit and retain the best staff possible. We talked about opportunities for our kids. And fortunately, at the beginning of the school year, we said we were committed to opportunities for our kids. And to that point, COVID has not impacted any of our extracurricular activities, clubs, or athletics. They've all functioned. You heard President Lumia speak of the phenomenal accomplishments of many of our students. He also indicated that last year, those opportunities were not available to some of our students, which was extremely unfortunate. That has been a priority for this district. We're looking to add boys volleyball and girls modified lacrosse teams. Obviously, they're going to need coaches. They're going to need supplies. And in the area of the fine arts, why not have a marching band at Roy C. Ketchum High School and John Jay High School? We want to make that a reality. One of the things we've seen is that some of our students feel that they don't necessarily have a place to go, that they don't necessarily belong. Again, it's incumbent upon us to provide those students with those opportunities to learn, grow, and be successful. We can move on to the next slide, please. Obviously, we've got some contractual obligations. Unified bowling team, which is great. I want to thank the Poughkeepsie Journal for the article that was just phenomenal, that was shared with the Special Olympics. Obviously, we need to rent a facility for that. We don't have a district bowling alley. Special education, tuition, and direct service codes increase based on student need. If our students need the services, we need to work to provide them with the services that they need. Phone equipment upgrade at Roy C. Ketchum High School. Additional budget, as I said, safety and security for police coverage at all of our events. Athletic and physical education needs, weight room maintenance, ice machine at Roy C. Ketchum High School. And in addition to that, equipment upgrades. A new transportation routing and software program that will continue to help our transportation department, who worked diligently over the summer, continues to work diligently, and has uninterruptedly brought our students to and from school since the first day of school. This will make it that much easier and less time consuming for them to do that. Facilities project, $100,000. The possibility of universal pre-kindergarten. We may have St. Mary's of Wappingers as a provider next year, which means we will be able to accept more participants. And this is huge. The expansion of vocational and technical educational opportunities in our district. Years ago, when I was back in college, I did my master's in vocational and technical education. That was a long time ago. But unfortunately, between that time and now, vocational and technical education unfortunately went by the wayside. Well, now it's coming back. We all know it never should have gone away, but it's coming back because, as we all know, there are some phenomenal opportunities for individuals in the skilled trades. And as we all know, those individuals are looking for skilled employees. One of the things that we're doing is we're taking the welding program that we've had at Van Wyck Junior High School. We are going to duplicate it at Wappingers Junior High School. There's absolutely no reason why one middle school has the program and the other middle school doesn't. In September, they will both have it. And I look forward to continue to enhance the vocational and technical educational opportunities for our students as they have an opportunity to learn about those careers, what studies they entail, and they can make some determinations as to whether or not that might be a field that they may want to go into. I'm looking forward to that, and also working with Dutchess County BOCES as well as Dutchess Community College. BOCES estimated, obviously using the initial service request or the ISR form. Let's move on to the next slide if we could. Supplies, restoration of building level supply codes based on enrollment, restoration of curriculum-based supply requests based on enrollment. Classroom and teacher furniture added. Hopefully we won't have chairs that are not necessarily, well, let's just say they couldn't hold me if I attempted to sit in them. So let's get some new chairs and let's get some new tables and let's show our students how much we care about them by providing them with furniture that really adds to their entire educational environment. Of course, we have benefits. ERS, employee retirement system rates decrease, while the TRS, or the teacher retirement system rates, remain constant. Health insurance is budgeted at 8%. We'll know more where that comes out in March of this year, which only a month and a half away. So let's take a look at some numbers. So the 2021-2022 approved tax levy was $179 million, about $700. The 2022-2023 preliminary tax levy will be $181,487,000, which is a levy-to-levy increase of $1,787,000, which is a levy-to-levy percentage of 0.99%. The approved budget, about $256 million. The preliminary budget for 22-23, $264. Budget to budget, about $8.5 million. Budget to budget increase from one year to the next, 3.33%. We can move on to the next, please. So as I stated before, the preliminary budget that I'm presenting this evening includes a levy-to-levy increase of 0.99%. As I stated, it's 0.39 below the allowable tax cap levy amount. Pending the finalization of the state aid through the state budget process and the estimates that we're using, we do not anticipate, as I stated before, a levy-to-levy increase of more than 0.99%. We will continue to review all budgetary items in an effort to reduce the levy-to-levy rate for the community. And on to the next slide, if we could. So let's take a look at this chart. So let's go back. 17-18, the WCSD tax cap was 0.95%. The approved tax levy was 0.95%. 18-19, the tax cap was 2.92, tax levy 2.92. 19-20, tax cap 1.42, tax levy 1.42. You see there's a theme here. 2021, WCSD tax cap 3.64, levy to levy, tax levy 3.64. 21-22, 2.49, tax levy 2.49. And this is where we make changes. Tax cap 2022-2023 preliminary 1.38, tax levy increase. The numbers are not similar, 0.99. I personally believe in working with Assistant Superintendent Crandall, the district senior staff administration, the Board of Education, our faculty and staff, and getting input from our community, that we can continue to deliver the services that I identified in the presentation and be fiscally responsible to the taxpayers within our school district. And with that, it was my pleasure to have the opportunity to present this evening. What can you expect in the future? Send those emails, please, to budget@wcsdny.org. Did you like what you heard? Did you not like what you heard? Let us know. Presentations and reports will be posted to the Board of Education section of the website. Frequently asked questions posted to the website within 2 business days. We will continue providing our educational updates to the WCSD learning community. The Legislative Action Committee board approved goal for continued advocacy is not to lose any New York State funding. And I might also add, one of the items that I have been advocating in, as Vice President Kelland indicated, through the school board advocate efforts, I have been advocating with local elected officials, and I will be going to Albany to advocate for the removal of the cap on retired police officers' salaries not to exceed $35,000. I've been mentioning this now for the past couple of months. I think we've seen it here in Wappingers. I think we've seen it throughout the state and throughout the country. We need our schools to be as safe as possible. And by just extending hours, that doesn't do it. We need individuals that have the expertise in working with difficult to sometimes volatile situations, that are able to work as often as needed to develop a positive rapport with that staff, with those students, and that community. We find that when we're able to do that and that positive relationship is established, people are more willing to speak to someone about something that they're hearing that might be concerning to them. So I am hopeful that we get some movement from New York State in that regard. Because without that, we can increase the hours all we want, but it's going to be different people. So it'll help, but it won't help to the extent necessary, which is being more proactive as opposed to having to be more reactive. We will be doing community and municipality presentations to share the budget. And of course, our priorities, a safe learning environment for our students and staff, where all of our students can reach their highest level of success, not only academically, but socially and emotionally as well. And with that, I thank you for the opportunity to present this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Bonk, for your excellent presentation. Are there any questions at this time from any board member? Eddie?
Thank you, Dr. Bonk. Needless to say, I'm happy to see in your presentation that you took recommendations from the board very seriously. And that way, I'd like to compliment you and senior staff for pretty much including most, if not almost all, of my suggestions. So I greatly appreciate that. Especially, I know, although prior administration did try to implement marching band, which I had suggested a couple of years ago. Unfortunately, we didn't have much participation. I'm hoping this time around, from a student standpoint, we have a little bit more enthusiasm at both of the high schools to get that up and running. That would be fantastic. Obviously, I've always been a big advocate for vocational and increasing the vocational program, so I'm very happy that you were able to include that within the budget. The other thing also mentioned is taking a look at some of our outdated sports equipment in the schools. That's an important thing as well. Sometimes, we forget about the other sports. We do have other things besides football, baseball, basketball, and soccer. So the other things for the kids to participate in, we still need top quality equipment. I just have, and then we covered obviously the social and emotional, with the mental health assistance and expanding and continue to grow that. So that's great. I just have one quick question. One of the things that I had suggested, you may have included it, but it wasn't spelled out specifically. Some additional enrichment for the lower grades, 5 to 8, other than what Mr. Panzer works on, either creative writing. Is there any way that we're going to be able to somehow just expand some of the enrichment programs at the lower grades? That's one question. And then my second question just is, based on what you started last year for summer school, are we going to be able to maintain those programs from a budget standpoint? And if by chance there's a need to increase, where there may be more class time, do we have sufficient monies in the budget that we can allocate? I think we had about 900 or so students last summer. I don't know, we could have 1,200 students this coming summer, just to make sure we have the resources, for the students and for faculty. So those are really just my two questions. Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. Yeah, we fully plan on replicating what we did last summer, and we also look to potentially expand it as well. The only concern that we potentially have is staffing. We're hoping that some of our staff internally will be willing to work over the summer. Again, I know it's been a difficult 2 years, but these types of academic enrichment activities and services for our students over the summer, in my opinion, are going to become common over the next few years. They're going to be necessary. So we certainly plan on doing that, and we're looking into ways in which we can provide those opportunities, K-12. We fully anticipate on doing that. And your first question?
Just expanding on some of the enrichment programs for lower grades, starting. I just, in my head,
you're talking about during this
fifth grade. Yeah.
You're talking about starting in September?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we are evaluating everything. A lot is going to depend upon, how our assessment of students comes in this year, as we continue through the end of the school year. But as I said, we're seeing learning loss. There's no question about it. And we're going to have to be proactive, and it's going to be incumbent upon us to come up with some very, very innovative programs and make sure that we allocate the resources necessary so that in some cases, our students will be going, and I know they may not be happy to hear this, but they may be going to school pretty close to year round if their parents would like them to. Again, I see that not only this summer, but I see it in the coming summers. And we've got to be mindful of it to get our students back to where they need to be pre-pandemic levels.
Right. I just feel as important as it is for the learning loss for those particular students. I mean, I'd say thankfully to say we do have a percentage of students. I won't hold me quote me to a number, you know, that have maintained, but
Sure.
also need that enrichment push.
Yep.
I don't
Agreed.
want those students to kind of then be left behind because
Right.
we're focusing all of our attention on those students who had learning loss. So we have to figure out a balance where those that, you know, we need to give them that extra push,
Right.
you know, to achieve. We want them to have those same opportunities. So
Agreed.
That's all. Thank you.
Agreed. You're welcome. Sure.
I have a question.
Sure,
You-
Trustee Odoms.
Thank you. You have mentioned the tax cap of 0.99, and since we know that the tax cap drives and support the budget, will this affect future budgets, or does it reset every year in terms of, you know, we don't fully use it? Will we lose some? Will that
Good.
kind of
Good
affect the
question,
opportunity
Ms.
in the
Crandall. I know you have the answer because we talked about this, that this might come up. So you could probably answer it much more proficiently than I could. Are you there, Ms. Crandall?
I am right here. So, Mr. Odoms, and I saw Mr. Spencer shaking his head as well. You are correct. If the district does not go all the way up to the tax cap of 1.38, there are dollars that will be lost. Approximately $880,000 would be money that would never be able to be recovered through this process. However, that does translate into a tax rate that is below what the max allowable would be. And as Dr. Bonk has mentioned before, there are other local municipalities and towns and so forth that are presenting budgets that are at a 0%. And Dr. Bonk, you may want to go into that. So the district will find itself in a position to have to explain itself as to why we have to have increases versus municipalities not necessarily having them. So Dr. Bonk, I'll bounce it back to you.
Sure. I don't have the specific criteria in front of me, but Ms. Crandall, would you say that it would be accurate, probably within Dutchess County, to say that probably at least half of the school districts last year in their budget did not go up to the cap? Would that be accurate, do you believe?
I think it's even more than that, but yes, it was a higher.
So I was on the conservative side. So this is not something that has not been done. It hasn't been done in this district. It has been done in other districts. And when I've spoken with colleagues in those districts that have done that, they've indicated that they were very, very pleased with how they were able to go through the process and prioritize what they did need and what they did not need. And it really, really refocused them on a very, very, I don't want to say lean budget, but a budget that provided the programs and services that the student needed and almost forced them to some degree to streamline some areas of the budget. And that's what I believe we're doing. The district has lost enrollment over the years. We just are returning from a pandemic. I think things have changed. I think things have changed within the world. I think the needs of our students have changed. I think to some degree, the focus of what a school does, depending upon who you ask, has changed. And I think that we as a district need to change with it. And by saying that, what I mean is that we need to go through our budget with a fine-tooth comb. And where there are areas that it simply makes sense to leverage resources or to combine resources, That's what we're doing, and we've done that. The budget that I'm presenting to you this evening is not a budget that is cutting any current services. If anything, it is expanding services to the extent that I indicated on the slides. Now, Ms. Crandall, could you potentially share how, if we go forward with that, how's that going to impact our fund balance compared to where our
It will
fund balance is now?
Sure, certainly. So the fund balance there's no fund balance utilization beyond the 3.75 million that we have consistently returned to the taxpayers. This budget is 100% balanced, utilizing the tax levy, the New York State aid as projected right now through the governor's proposal, the assigned fund balance of 3.75 million, which has remained constant and really needs to in order to be able to make this whole calculation work, and the expenditures as presented this evening. So that is a balanced budget utilizing no fund balance, and in order for it to be able to work, no unassigned fund balance will be utilized. So again, as we have seen in 2020, we had a fund balance decrease that brought us down to approximately 1.39%. And then in 2021, we recognized a fund balance increase, which brought us to 3.58%. And we hope to continue to get it closer to that 4% maximum allowable as per New York State at the end of June 30th, 2022.
Thank you, Ms. Crandall. You hit on exactly what I wanted to convey, that based upon where that fund balance was, based on the work done last year and based on what we're doing this year, we expect to be up to the maximum allowable fund balance limit, which is important because we never know what's going to come down the road.
And the follow-up question is, some people may be
Excuse
thinking that's
me, I need a motion to extend.
I was just going to
Extend?
say, motion
So
for
moved. And
10.
Second, everybody in favor?
yes.
Unanimous.
Yeah. And,
How long
and
was
ju-
that? How
10
long?
minutes, I said.
Thank you.
And just a follow-up question. Thank you for the answer. And just a follow-up
Sure.
question. Some people
Sure.
are thinking that's great. Wappingers is going to continue to provide quality education using less funds or being really physically responsible. But what does it mean for me as maybe a taxpayer that does not have kids in the school district? You know, the three things they're thinking is that going to still increase my taxes? Is it going to remain par, or is it going to decrease it? So that's what
So,
people just
Good question.
wanna
Ms.
hear.
Crandall, could you give the specifics?
Sure.
Thank you, Trustee Odoms.
sure. So, Mr. Odoms, at this point in time, we normally do not try to present that information out because we wait until we have finalized state aid numbers. Because again, if this state aid comes in at the same, a little bit lower, some of these estimates may change. What we will provide in an upcoming presentation is what a projected tax rate would be for homes of varying values. Let's use $200,000, $400,000, $500,000 homes. We'll be able to provide what an estimated rate would look like, an estimated tax bill would look like based on current year assessments, because we don't have the assessments for that 22-23 school year yet, but we should have the updated tax levy amount and be able to provide that. So that we don't necessarily break it down into people who have, or families who have students in school, or families whose students may have aged out. But what we do it is by house value. So we'll be able to provide that information. We are still pretty early in this process. Quite a few estimates are still hanging out there, as well as, you know, the overall picture of what state aid would look like. So hopefully the budget will come in at New York State by April 1st. And I know that's something that I'm sure that Governor Hochul would like to have as a notch in her belt as well, because that is a great accomplishment, and we can move forward. April 7th, we will be having a presentation that will detail all of this. At that point in time, we'll be able to support the superintendent's recommended budget with finalization of those aid numbers, and definitely be able to provide that information as requested, Mr. Odoms.
Ms.
Thank you.
Crandall, thank you for that answer, but I think it's safe to say that coming in with a budget 0.39% under the tax cap will lower the tax rates. They will be lower with a 0.99 increase as opposed to a 1.38 increase, correct? Yes.
Well,
It all
the
depends.
increase, well, right, it all depends on the assessment. I until I run those numbers, I just want to make sure, Dr. Bonk, I'll confirm that for you as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Chairman, did you have a question before Marie? Did you have a question? What up, Marie?
I
Chairman,
did, but Dr. Bonk and Assistant Superintendent Crandall answered them while they were answering Trustee Odom. So I don't
Thank
have
you.
any more questions.
Marie.
Only I just have an observation. It's impressive that you're looking to be so fiscally responsible and only increasing the amount from the taxpayers, about $1.7 million. Now, overall, getting a budget increase of $8.5 million. It's pretty impressive how you did that. My question was about the fund balance, and you answered it, so thank you.
You're welcome, Trustee
Marie,
Spencer.
Maybe you had a question or questions. Go ahead, Marie.
Yes, actually, it was more of an observation. First, I want to thank Dr. Bonk and Kristen and the entire senior staff for making my wish list happen on this budget. The special ed, the increase in that, the more extensive, expanding the field trips, the marching band, the vocational, you hit all my dream spots on this. And just always, and having the full salaries actually budgeted in this year, no surprises, and making
Fully
it
transparent.
I was very impressed this year. And, luckily, I will say, if we were to go to 1.38 versus the 0.99, I'm thinking my taxes would have been a little higher versus the 0.99. So again, as a new homeowner in this district, thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Peggy?
Yes, I also was very happy to see all my desires there, or almost all. The increase in the sports, the marching band that we tried to get before, the vocational programs, which are so important, the mental health and special ed expansions that we need. The only thing that I would like to see, if we could, was to expand intramurals, because there are students who really cannot commit to a team or just really are not coordinated enough for a particular sport, but would like to play. And some of the facilities at the high schools out of season, for instance, the gyms, the fall and spring sports are played outside. So the gyms are available if we can find people who are willing, the staff who are willing to give some kids the opportunity to just play for fun.
Terry?
I just want to say it gets clear that there's some sensitivity as well placed on the fact that, there's a lot of reaching into the pocket based on the CPI. So the consumer price index, there's actually an increase of 7% over the last year, the highest and largest since 1982. So considering that folks have had a lot of reaching in the pocket based on all the prices going up, I think it's pretty cool that there's some sensitivity built in here, and the budget is still getting the job done. So good job, Dr. Bonk.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Trustee Cahill.
John, Mr. Morgan?
Thank you, President Mumia. To use the phrase that I'm glad Trustee Spencer introduced, I think that at first blush, this shows fiscal responsibility. And I, for one, am happy to see that. And I think that there are other people here too who have already talked about things that are being added. I know during the presentation, Dr. Bonk, you talked about new routing software for our very large transportation department. You talked about how that would make it easier and more convenient. And you talked about those things. What you didn't mention is that going into this school year, a lot of bus routes were combined, which realized
Right.
savings for the district in that area that freed up money to do other things. So my question is, could you highlight a couple of areas similar to that that are included in the plan for next school year, number one? And number two, could you or Assistant Superintendent Crandall talk about how maintaining a strong fund balance, a strong rainy day fund, for lack of a better term, will help the fiscal strength of the school district moving forward?
Very good, Ms. Crandall. If you wouldn't mind, if you can take the fund balance question.
Sure.
Thank
So-
you.
Can I get a motion to extend first, please?
Motion for 5 minutes.
5 more minutes, motion to 5, extend, raise your hand, please. Yeah, unanimous, 5 more minutes.
Certainly. So with regard to the fund balance, as we've referenced before, it is essentially a savings account. So having those funds available within the New York State guidelines is definitely a plus for the district. There are reserve accounts that could be created if there was in excess of 4%. And actually, that was one of the items that was on Trustee Sloshower's list. However, at this point in time, our tax sortieri seem to be okay. Our capital reserve and some of those reserves are very, very restrictive. But we will be mindful of that as we plan. So yes, having fund balance definitely does reduce fiscal stress with regard to the district as an overall, and just the increase in fund balance from 2020 to 2021 year ends was significant, and we hope to continue that trend.
Christian.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things we've seen from year to year is these wild fluctuations in funding. And it's very, very difficult to develop and sustain programs and services when you run into those issues year to year. So if there's a way to increase our fund balance up to the maximum in the event that we find ourselves in a situation in any given year, we can have the discussion about dipping into that fund balance to fund programs and services that we believe are extremely important to our district, and not necessarily place those costs onto the taxpayers of our district. That is what I would like to see moving forward. That is why the restoration of the fund balance is so important to me, and Ms. Crandall as well. You talked about what transportation did over the summer. You're absolutely right, Trustee Morgan, and that will continue. We believe that the new software system will improve the routing. It will make the routing more effective, more efficient, more timely, less cumbersome. One of the other areas that we're looking at is potentially streamlining, and I don't want to say streamlining because we're not eliminating any positions, but how do we avoid the duplication of services within our 15 schools? Is there a way to do that? Do we need certain people assigned to certain things, or could we potentially assign them to an area that we believe is deficient and needs improvement? That has been an ongoing assessment. Obviously, since I've been in my role over the past year and a half, I really haven't had a tremendous amount of time to be able to sit down and look at that, but I know the department heads have, and that's something that we're also going to be taking into consideration in the future. I'm also potentially looking at our special education department, and I need to thank Assistant Superintendent Zip and that entire staff for doing a tremendous job. That being said, we need to ensure that our focus remains on providing our students with the necessary services that they need. And it's incumbent upon us to find a way to be able to do that. So one of the things that you're going to see hopefully coming up in the budget is, I don't want to use the word realignment because that's going to get people all worried. Oh, they're going to realign. but you may see some redeployment of some of the services in a manner that is more effective and more efficient and serves more kids better than the manner in which we currently do so. So I hope that answers your questions. I wish I could be more specific. I don't have the specifics, but that's the general tone of what we are looking to do as a district level senior team as we move forward.
Thank you,
Dr.
Dr.
Bonk.
You're
Just
welcome.
to point out,
Trustee
one of
Morgan.
the
To the-
specific areas that Dr. Bonk had mentioned is in the area of human resources with regard to the
Thank you.
online application process, for example. That has been a work in process, but we will be having that. That's a very streamlined process. We work with TSS department as well.
You know, and you gave me another idea, and I know that I'm using your time, Board of Education, and I apologize. But I mentioned it briefly. The Human Resources Department has undergone much change over the past 5 years. And we are now in a position where we are very reliant on substitute personnel. It was starting to get there before the pandemic. Now it's even more of a necessity. So the addition of that personnel assistant that will be coming in, that their responsibility will be substitute personnel throughout the district in our 9 different collective bargaining units, as opposed to having it directly with a couple of personnel. One personnel associate would have a couple of units, another one would have a couple of units. This will be helpful in developing consistency and continuity. And then there will be one person who will be the go-to person for the substitute personnel within our district. Also, the benefit to that is the recruitment. We want to make sure that we have the best and the brightest working in our district, whether they be regular employees, substitute employees, doesn't matter. This individual will be directly involved in the screening and interview process as well. So the human resources is another area, Trustee Morgan. Ms. Crandall, thank you for mentioning it.
This is a last comment. And so far, Mr. Schleichauer talked about enrichment programs. We have Dr. Miller, who has provided enrichment programs in the district. I sincerely hope that we continue with his services and expand it to different schools. Extremely important. Secondly, I think the the professional developers. I wish they could increase in size, because they do a phenomenal job, and they could be a source of enrichment for the kids at the elementary school level.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, President Lumia, because our expectation moving forward is the professional developers who have been a tremendous resource, not only for our teachers, but teachers throughout the region. We're looking to have them work more, in particular in our elementary buildings, in that exact area, enrichment. And again, we've communicated that to the principals. We've communicated that to the directors, that we want them in there with some of the most innovative techniques. As we know, teachers, we need to change our craft every year. Things change every year, and technology is constantly changing. So I see their role. I don't see the number of individuals expanding, but I see their role and the depth of their role expanding, President Lumia.
I hope so. Also, I'm glad that you're reinstating marching band. There used to be a program in existence for many, many years, and I don't know when it stopped, but I sincerely hope that this time around there'll be people interested in actually joining marching band on both.
Well, one of the things I will say is, prior to coming to Wappingers, I worked in a district to the north of us. I enjoyed my time there very much. And they have one of the best marching bands in the country. Now, you probably know the district that I'm talking about, and I could see the positive impact that it had on the students and the families and the self-esteem of those individuals. And I say, why not Wappingers? So hopefully we can move forward with that. I think we will have the interest. We'll do our best to generate it.
Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Bonk, and looking forward to your next one. And with that
My
being said,
pleasure.